declare war. Let's not forget. So we are at war. Get your mind set in a military state of mind. It's not time for slacking and slowfulness, as Evangelist Gigi talked about on Wednesday night. It's not time to be sluggish in your spirit. So wake up, Zion. The war cry has been called out. Many are called, but few are chosen. Those who are called, he calls you out of many things. He's calling you out of your sin. He's calling you out of darkness. He's calling you out of lack of understanding. He needs you to be aware. Be quick. Be mindful. Be watchful of what is going on. We're living in that day that you can't afford to be asleep spiritually. There's so much going on. And all we're doing is just shaking our heads and saying, what's happening to people? They're losing their minds. Satan does not like you. He will do anything he can to tear you down, to destroy you. So this is not the time to be asleep. In boot camp, we had nights and days where we had to stay up all night long. Even though you have marched all day in the hot sun, then they gave you guard duty at night. If you dozed off, believe you me, you would not like the consequences. So you had to fight even yourself to stay awake all night long. And the guards and the captains and commanders would come through just to check to see if you were still awake. So there is no time for sleep. If there's no time for sleep and slumber in the natural war, how much more in the spiritual war? The Lord wants us to get sincere, get geared up, get the mindset that we need to fight. And so we look again at Deborah as she sent for Barak. And Barak, his name meant lightning. And she told him in verse 6 that the Lord, the God of Israel, command you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them to Mount Tabor. The Lord said, I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to Kishon River. And this is what he said, I will give him into your hands. Yes. Now, the prophetess spoke those words to Barak, coming from the Lord, direct to the Lord. When the Lord speaks a word to you, somebody comes to you and you know that they live in right and they speak a word to you and say, thus said the Lord. You be mindful. Be careful how you respond. Yes. I remember in my early days, the Lord sent me to 3 of my family members. And he told me, do not be afraid of their faces. And he told me, say what thus said the Lord. Don't add nothing to it. Don't take anything away. And he said, their response to what you say will not be to you, but it will be to me. And so I was a little nervous about going to these people because I knew what they were doing, how they were living. But I went in the name of the Lord. And 2 of them accepted it, and then the 3rd one, she went off. And she started saying all kinds of things. And I went to say to her, be careful. You don't understand the words that you're saying. They're not to me, but they're to the Lord. And the Lord locked my jaws so that I wouldn't warn her. Because he had told me, say what thus said the Lord. Don't add nothing to it. Don't take anything away. All right. And so in this situation, Deborah spoke and told Barak what thus said the Lord. All right. And then she said, the Lord said, I will give him into your hands. But what did Barak say? He told Deborah, well, I'll go, but only if you go. And if you don't go, I'm not going. You're talking to the Lord. The victory is already won. The war was already won. The battle. That was an insult to God. He's saying, well, Lord, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I got a better way. Be careful. Be careful how you dismiss when God is speaking, when God is moving. Be careful. And so, with his conditional obedience, he went on. And Deborah agreed to go with him. But she also let him know that the victory is yours, because God said. But the glory, it's going to go to a woman. And that's exactly what happened. God sent Barak, whose name means lightning. And he went to the battlefield to meet Sisera. His army was well known because of the chariots were barred down with iron. You've seen those gladiator movies, those movies with all of the iron, the spikes and things sticking out of the wheels. They were well equipped, well known army, and they were capable of doing their job. But God made the grounds level because he sent a storm. He sent the rain on the battlefield right before the battle began. And those heavy chariots were bogged down in the mud. So they had to get away from their chariots and get down on the ground and fight. And they were not used to fighting on the ground level. They were used to running over people and having their way. But they had to dismiss themselves from the chariots because they were stuck in the mud. and get down on the ground and fight. And they were so confused about what was going on that they started running. But they were defeated. And Syria ran on feet himself to get away. How many of you know when God does something, he don't stop until it's completed? This was their problem, that whenever God gave them the victory, they would half-heartedly do the war. Somebody would either take the treasures when God says leave them, don't touch nothing, or they would not kill everybody like God said, wipe them all out. Because if you left somebody, they will rise up again. And this is what had happened. So Sisera had ran off and left his army because he knew he was defeated. And he went to the tent of Jalad, if I'm saying it right. Now, Jalad, whatever, her name meant wild goat. Woo! A wild goat. And he came to her tent for rest, to hide out. You see, they were her and her husband were tent makers, and they had made all of this iron rails and bars for the army. So that's why he felt so comfortable coming to the tent where she was. And to understand what is the connection with her and the Israelites, because she lived in the town close to Canaan. The connection was that her husband was a descendant of Moses. So there was her connection with the Israelites being oppressed. And how many of you know God had to have a female David? A female David to slay the Goliath. And that's what he did. After she gave him the milk and made him comfortable and hid him under the rugs, she took her time until he fell asleep. And she took a peg, a tent peg, and a hammer. And she nailed it into his tent. So, therefore, she got the glory and the recognition for the Goliath. And just to let you know, women, and I'm just about done, that let God use you. It's time to shift.